and welcome. I'm Tracy Pa with the Midday News. Prime Minister James Marape has called on G20 nations to intensify their climate mitigation efforts in support of the Pacific, in line with the 2050 strategy for the Blue Pacific continent. Marape's appeal came in response to United Nations Secretary General's statement to the PIF on Tuesday.
Prime Minister James Marape has made a call directly for G20 nations, especially the USA, China, and Japan, the three strong associates of Pacific nations, to step up in their mitigation efforts to the Pacific, consistent with the 2050 strategy for the Blue Pacific continent. In his response to the UN Secretary General's statement, Prime Minister Marape emphasized the importance of global responsibility in addressing climate change. He welcomed the UN's continued support for Pacific nations and reaffirmed the region's commitment to building a resilient future. To address climate change challenges in the Pacific region, PM Marape stressed the importance of strengthening the collective response through shared knowledge, resources, and advocacy. He also called for the need to enhance regional economic integration through trade agreements, investment, and private sector engagement, as well as fostering greater cooperation in health, education, and disaster resilience. Australia was commended for its recognition of the 2050 strategy for the Blue Pacific continent and their contributions towards addressing climate change challenges faced by Pacific nations. Australia is contributing 100 million Australian dollars into our Pacific Climate Resilient Fund. Freddie Mo, TV1 News.
Papua New Guinea is launching a state-owned enterprise named FCL to enhance its involvement in the tuna industry. Fisheries Minister Jalta Wong announced that FCL will move beyond managing and facilitating investment to actively participating in the commercial sector. This change aims to address the current disparity where PNG and other Pacific nations receive inadequate returns from their tuna resources. By maximizing profit and investment in processing, FCL hopes to significantly increase the value retained within the country. The minister plans to present the relevant bills to Parliament by the end of the year. Papua New Guinea's music industry has gained international recognition, with reggae artist Anselm winning the Intercontinental Music Award for Best of Africa. Africa Reggae Raga Dance Hall with his track Break the Barrier. The song, produced by Emmanuel Toxic Man Muganahua, also featured a music video shot in Kerala, India. In a relevant achievement, Muganahua was named International Sound Engineer of the Year 2024 at the ISSA Award, further cementing PNG's growing global presence in the music industry. Their success highlight the talent emerging from PNG and brings pride to the nation. The Australian government has put a cap on the number of international students in Australia as part of efforts to reduce overall migration to pre-pandemic levels. The Education Minister says the change makes the sector better and fair.
One of the nation's biggest exports,
it makes us money and it makes us friends.
International student numbers are being capped.
This is just about setting the system up in a better and a fairer way.
Under the plan, the number of full fee paying international students able to start study at Australian universities and vocational institutions would be capped at 270,000 next year. That's a drop of about 50,000 from last year, when numbers were about 323,000, and sets figures close to pre-pandemic levels in 2019.
I think that's not right.
I think it's really concerning.
I don't want them to run out of money and then start cutting stuff.
Universities told individually how much they'll be constrained, warning the economic impact will be substantial in the $48 billion a year higher education market.
A cut means less revenue, it means less students coming to Australia, and that has a knock-on effect.
I have friends from overseas who are already considering going to other destinations which are slightly more welcoming.
Larger city universities with a higher proportion of international students will be the most affected. Regional universities will be allowed to enrol more.
This is really making up for pretty devastating unintended consequences of previous policy regimes.
Since Labor was elected, the number of foreign students coming into the country has more than doubled, and that's placed enormous pressure, particularly on the housing market.
Capping international student numbers is a centrepiece of the government's move to drive down overall migration, a point of bipartisan agreement. But beyond that, there's little consensus, especially on what these reductions will mean for the hot housing and rental markets.
Opal miners in Outback, Queensland, Australia are worried about the future of their industry, with a huge property used for mining being turned into a national park. The land was purchased by the state government using a $21 million anonymous donation, but it is also home to dozens of leasehold miners.
About the thrill of the hunt. Robbie Vinicombe has spent 30 years combing the red dirt of Outback, Queensland, searching for slithers of rainbow rock.
It's the most beautiful gemstone on earth. I'll be here for the rest of my life if I can.
The desolate stretch of land is home to a gemstone found only in Queensland, the Boulder Opal.
But if that was clean, you'd be looking at a $50,000 stone there.
But Robbie fears his industry is threatened. Like many other opal miners in the area, he holds mining leases on Vergemont, a former cattle station bought by the Queensland government to turn into national park.
We're all small companies, we're family companies, we've invested our life in this.
Nearby properties have also been bought, all of which will combine to create a protected area corridor for endangered and vulnerable species.
There's dozens and dozens and dozens of stakeholders here that have been here a lifetime and generations, and we're just completely ignored as though we don't even exist.
While it's been assured that existing operations can continue on parts of the property, it's unclear what the future holds, with some mining leases nearing expiration.
For people to invest in this, we need to know certainty, we need to know there is a future.
The industry contributes $14 million to a nearby town touted the Boulder Opal capital of the world.
I can't see the Winton Shire without opal in it. It is so important to us.
A bush conservation group says while Vergemont Station's landscape isn't unique in Outback Queensland, it stands out from other government-owned parks.
The fossicking is a pretty small footprint, so I think there's certainly potential for those things to work hand in hand.
For now, miners like Robbie persevere for the lucky find.
In sports, former South Sydney mentor Jason Dimitri is set to take charge of Papua New Guinea's campaign for the 2026 World Cup after being appointed as the new Commonwealth coach. Dimitri replaces Sydney Roosters assistant Justin Holbrook, who coached the Commonwealth during last year's Pacific Championships. Dimitri brings with him an impressive coaching resume at NRL level. The news comes at a great time for the game in PNG after the recent success of the NRL Bid Academy tournament that showcased the depth of exciting talent at schoolboy level and the continued development of players coming through the academy system. PNG RFL Chief Executive Officer Stanley Hondina was delighted had been able to secure the services of such a highly rated coach. That's the news at 12. Join us for more news and sports at 6 tonight.